The three toughest questions in an interview with the manager. Hi, how are you? I'm Romulo Gutierrez. This is the Job Room channel. I've been a recruiter and talent selector for 27 years. And today I'm going to tell you the three hardest questions in job interviews with the manager, but I'll also give you tips on how to answer them. The first tough question is, tell me a bit about your professional background. Okay? Two extremely important tips. First, try to talk about your career path in a way that you can steer your answer toward the job description. This is very important. I see a lot of people going into interviews with the manager and end up giving a very general, very generic answer. And then the manager can't see how you fit into the position. He can't place you in a role. Let me give you an example. I'm going to an interview for a pharmacy manager position, okay? And then the interviewer asks me, tell me a little about your professional background. But I've already worked in hospital pharmacies. I've worked in medication distribution centers. And instead of focusing on my experience when I actually worked in drugstores, which is the position in question, I end up talking a lot about hospital pharmacies, about medication distribution centers. And then I only spend 30 or 40 seconds talking about the period he really wants to know about, the time I spent at the drugstore, what I did there, the customer service, the medication purchases. And then when he asks that question, he can't picture me in a position. So what's likely to happen? The tendency is that he'll reject me in the interview, that I won't get through. In other words, I won't pass the interview. When talking about your professional background, here's a tip. Read the job description very carefully beforehand. Make sure you read the job description thoroughly. Highlight 3, 4, or 5 words from the job description on your phone or in your notes app. Then you'll identify the 4 or 5 most important points of the job posting. When you talk about your background, honestly, you'll try to connect what you've already done to those 4 or 5 keywords you picked out. That's the first tip. What's the second question they're almost certainly going to ask you? They'll probably ask, tell me a little about your results. Talk a bit about your results. When you talk about results, you need to use the rule of 3. What's the rule of 3? You'll talk about numbers you've improved, promotions you've earned, and goals you've achieved. All right? So keep that in mind. If you got promoted, you should mention that, okay? Even if they don't directly ask, tell me about your results. For example, since I used the drugstore example, I could say, look, at the drugstore where I worked for 2 years, I was always a reference point when it came to meeting targets. There, we had a target. For example, let me give you an example here, to sell around $40,000 in a store, okay? And as the manager, we always managed to reach around $55,000 to $60,000 per month. Because of that, out of 30 drugstores in the network, we were always among the top 2 or 3 in terms of sales and targets achieved, you know? So I can say, in fact, this performance I had with my team, never alone, with my team, led to me getting 2 promotions there. And this was also a number we improved because when I took over as manager of that drugstore, that pharmacy, we had really low numbers there. We were in 14th place in a ranking of 30 drugstores, and then we started ranking 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, depending on the month. So I can work as part of a team. Look, I managed to talk about numbers that improved. I managed to mention promotions when he asked about results, okay? Of course, I'm giving a fictional answer here, just as an example for you, but it's really important for you to think about your own professional journey, okay? Now I'm going to talk about the third question, which I think is the most complicated one in interviews with managers, all right? With a tip on how to answer it. Before I go on, if you want to simulate a live online interview, practice for an interview and get feedback, whether you did well, not so well, or where you can improve, help to better structure your answers. Just reach out to this WhatsApp number that's on the screen, okay? International code 5511, number 977065417. The WhatsApp link is here in the description and in the first comment of the video, okay? Just click, message me on WhatsApp, and we'll schedule it. The prices are low for subscribers of the Job Room channel. Here, the videos never stop and never fail. There are new videos every Wednesday, all right? So I ask for your subscription and you're like, okay. Third question that I find very tricky in an interview with the manager. What would you change about your last job? What would you change about your last job? So I consider this a trap question. It's a trap. A lot of candidates fall into the temptation of criticizing their previous company, criticizing their former boss, saying they would change everything. And that's not a good answer, okay? You should show critical thinking, but in moderation. You should praise the company you worked for before criticizing it. And if you show that you want or would like to make some changes, explain what you would change, why you would change it, and the benefits that change would bring. For example, if they ask me, since I used the pharmacy example here, later leave your profession in the comments so I can use examples from your field too. I could say, look at my last pharmacy, there was a problem I would change which was related to the system. Our system for purchasing medications was very slow. This often caused some medications to be out of stock at our pharmacy, and that would make some customers go to competing pharmacies. So I would look for a more agile system, which would bring much greater speed to our purchases and our customer service. In fact, I talked about this a few times with my boss, but it still hadn't been approved due to budget constraints. So notice how I didn't criticize the company, see how I was polite, see how I managed to give a good answer. Now, a question that the manager might, and probably will, ask you is, why did you leave your last job? That could also come up in your interview. And I left a complete answer in this video right here. Look, go check it out. Great preparation. Take care and see you next time. Bye-bye.